Who here has ever faced pressure or felt pressure from their family to follow a certain path in their lives? Good. Then there will be some of you for whom this speech will resonate with me, because at the root of it, that's what I'm talking about today is. It's about not just taking the path less traveled, but about taking the one clearly marked no entry. But first I want to start with a story. When I was in the 3rd grade, I was in a play with a good friend of mine named Tom. And the play was about a group of juvenile delinquents in a reform school. Of course I was playing a juvenile delinquent because that's what I was. And it was 3rd grade, so very G-rated. In that play, at the climax, Tom and I get into a fight. He is supposed to insult me. I take offense. I stand up, push him back against the wall, put my hand on his neck and call him a jerk. Very simple, like as I said, G-rated, 3rd grade. So we practiced for months, and we're there, and we're in the play, and it's going well up until that moment. Tom, as scripted, insults me. I stand up, push him back against the wall, I have my hand on his throat, and of course my line is, "Shut up, you jerk." And that's the line. Except at that very moment, a light bulb goes off in my mind. I've got this alternative line that's going to be great. It's going to make the play so much better. So there I am, hand on this guy's throat, and I shout at the top of my lungs, "Shut up, you!" Insert inappropriate swear word here. I don't know who was more mortified, whether it was Mr. Fishman, my 3rd grade drama teacher, or my parents who were sitting in the front row. After the play, Mr. Fishman took me aside and he sat me down and he said, "John, you know, you really shouldn't have sworn." But then he said something else. He said, "You know, though, I understand why you said that. That's what a real person would have said if he had really been in that situation." So I didn't feel so bad. I didn't feel so bad because even though I had broken a social convention, even though I had done something that other people perhaps didn't approve of, I had done something at the root of which because it felt right. In fact, I had done something because, that other people eventually had said was right. As it turns out, this would become a recurring theme in my life. Now, I grew up in Taiwan in circumstances perhaps not unlike many CIS students grow up in. My father was an entrepreneur. He had a real estate company in Vietnam, and I was expected to enter into that business. I went to Taipei American School, went to boarding school, went to college, and through that period of life, I was a very conventional child, active, president of my class, had lessons after school, all this stuff. I wasn't a very good student because I wasn't very motivated, couldn't see the value in the schoolwork, but I think that's normal too. After school though, actually the idea of the value of work changed for me. I was a management consultant at a company called Accenture. Accenture is the largest management consulting company in the world. And in consulting, in my job, the equation was very simple. If I did a good job, the client saves money. I got it. So I worked very hard, and I got it. And as a result, I excelled at that job. I was promoted early, I had very good performance reviews, and I felt I was on top of the world. I thought I had it figured out. My career was on the upswing. And it was around this time that I started getting phone calls from my family. Hey, do you want to go to Vietnam and try working for Dad? And this was completely natural because I worked for my dad over the summers, this was expected. This was what I was supposed to do in my life. So despite the fact that things were going so well, I left Accenture, and by September of 2001, I found myself living in Ho Chi Minh City with my sister Gail, who was going to be my boss, working for my dad. This did not go as well as my very first job. I don't think it's going too far to say that it was an unmitigated disaster. And by the end of the year, look, I knew I had to leave. And so I went into a meeting with my dad, and I remember this meeting because it was so hard. I started to lay out, why I wanted to leave. And I could tell from his face that, 3 words in, he had stopped listening. Despite what I had to say, what he was hearing was that I was rejecting him. That I was rejecting being close to him, that I was rejecting working for him, that I was rejecting his life's work. Everything he had worked for. It's very emotional, and it's very hard to get logic and reason past that type of emotion. But that's not what I was saying at all. What I was really saying was what I was really rejecting. What I was really rejecting was a life of laziness. What I was really rejecting was being able to sit around, not do a good job or not do much, and still pick up a paycheck because I was the owner's son. What I wanted, what I really wanted, was a life of my own achievement, a life of my own accomplishment. What I didn't say was that I also really wanted a job in the toy industry. So, despite all of the pushback and all of the motion, I kept at it, and eventually we reached a deal. You know, my people, all my family, we have graduate degrees, and I was young, and at the time I didn't have one. So the deal was I would go to Taipei, apply to school, and business school, and if I got in, I would go. So this worked out. I went to Taipei, and this led to, through serendipity, perhaps the most important event in my life, and that is meeting my wife. If I hadn't gone to Taiwan, I wouldn't have met her, and there she is sitting right there, Sarah McLean. She's a year 3 teacher here at CIS. And the story of how we met and the story of how I asked her out and had to ask her out and had to ask her out is a good one. But not perhaps the topic of today's talk, but there is one piece of this that I want to bring in. And that is, you know, someone once told me that the smartest thing a person can do is to marry the smartest person that they can find. I believe that this is 100% true, and there's some in the audience who are perhaps a little young to hear this, but at some level I hope you take this home with you today. Because you know what? Everybody, all of us, need someone in our lives that are going to call BS on us when we're being stupid, because we're all stupid sometimes. And you know, and it's because of Sarah that I'm standing here today, and that I have a story to tell you, because without her there would be no second part to this speech. So I recognized that, and I fought for that. I fought for that despite the fact that she really didn't like me. I fought for that despite the fact that my sister Joan was on the phone with me one night. Like, what, are you crazy? This girl doesn't even like you. What are you wasting your time for? But we're married. And I fought for that, and I hope you'll fight for that too. So anyways, after school, we moved back to Hong Kong, where Sarah had a job at CIS here. And because we were engaged, I followed her. And I didn't have a job because I was right after business school. And I was very surprised. Within weeks of landing here, I got offered a job as an analyst at a hedge fund. Now, on paper, boy, this was such a great opportunity. You know, in business school, half the guys I had gone to school with, being at a hedge fund was like their dream job. I had good friends that were so bummed that they didn't get a job at this fund or that fund or whatever. You know, the fund industry, they compensate well. The hours are much better than in banking, and for better or worse, they're considered pretty sharp guys. So this was all very attractive, and so despite myself, despite the fact that prior to this offer, I had intentionally avoided jobs in the financial industry. I'd been interviewing in the industry that I really wanted to be in, which was toys, and you know, in consumer products, in consulting. I actually took that job, and it led to me learning the second main point, or one of the main points that I want to make today, which is just because it's right for everyone else doesn't mean it's right for you. Boy, if you've got an instinct about yourself, if you've got an idea about yourself, you follow that, because you know what? You are not everyone else. And it became very clear, very soon, that I had made a mistake. You know, I just wasn't that interested in it. And I know myself, if I'm not interested in it, I'm not going to do a good job. So very quickly, I became a stress case. I had trouble sleeping. I couldn't sleep at night. I had trouble breathing. I had stress-induced asthma. But you know what? Despite all of these warning signs, I was really committed to toughing it out. Because you know what? I had committed to myself, in my heart, that I was going to be a responsible adult. That's what I'd been taught. I had a young family, and this is what we do. We suffer for the ultimate success of our families. And I was committed to that. And ironically, it was Sarah. It was Sarah, the person who I thought really I was doing all of this for, who slapped some sense into me. She took me aside one night and she said, look, this is not working at all. You are so stressed out and you are so unhappy that it is making us stressed out and us unhappy. And what's your plan? What are you going to get 10 years down the road, suffer through all this, and then what, quit your job then and switch into the toy industry when we've got 2 kids, school fees, and a mortgage? No, it doesn't work that way. We're young. This is when it's going to happen. This is when it's easiest. You know where you want to go. You point yourself in the direction and you go. So despite this sort of idea that I was supposed to be rational and a responsible adult, Sarah seemed to have some pretty good reasoning behind those words. So I quit my job to look for a job in the toy industry. And boy, that was not easy. Despite the fact that my father had passed on, my family was very close. So me quitting my job, it was like an alarm had been pulled. It was full-on intervention time. I was getting phone calls. I was getting visits from siblings from out of the country. What the heck are you doing? Are you sure you know what you're doing? Have you thought this through? What's your plan? Sorry, I didn't call you back there. That's my sister right there. Implicit in all of this was that I had taken a step off the deep end. I was on an irresponsible lark. I wasn't thinking about anything. I was being completely selfish and chasing a dream. I actually think that nothing could have been further from the truth. I had known since college that I wanted to be in the toy industry. When you're 19 years old and you're still interested in Hot Wheels and Matchbox, and really nobody else is, you figure that out pretty quickly, and you begin to explore why that is. So I told my family, look, I know what I'm doing. Brushed off my resume, brushed up on my interview skills, wrote a lot of really good cover letters, and went in swinging. And a year later was still unemployed. Boy, that does not help your credibility when you're already doing something that nobody believes in. And there's a lot of reasons why I think I was unemployed for that long, but I think one phone conversation really sums it up. I was on a phone interview with a guy named Joe Diaz. He was the CEO of Learning Express, which is the United States' second largest toy retailer. And we reached the end of the conversation, and the guy says to me, look, John, I really just don't think this is the place for a gung-ho young MBA looking to make his mark on the world. I was stunned. I didn't know what to say to the guy. Look, I had been brought up to believe that no matter what you do, you work your hardest at it and you make a difference. And here was a guy who, pretty senior, who was basically telling me, as I heard it, yeah, we really aren't looking for smart, aggressive people. And it wasn't just him. I very quickly discovered through a series of interviews that the toy industry, like any other industry, is really full of guys that are just there to pick up a paycheck. They didn't get what I was about. They didn't understand my passion for product. They didn't understand that to me, making children happy was a magical experience. So it was really discouraging. At the end of that first year, I was this close. I was an inch away from giving it all up and retreating to conventionality. Sarah had gotten pregnant in that interim period, and we needed to move into a bigger place. We really needed to start thinking about the future. But I caught a lucky break. I got introduced to the CEO, to the owner, of a company called Toy State International. And Toy State is the largest manufacturer of light and sound vehicles. And the owner really got it. He understood me. He seemed to understand my passion. He seemed to understand how much I love kids. And he understood the value of fun. So he offered me a job as an assistant general manager of his company, basically his assistant. Within a year and a half, I had been promoted to managing director, and I had our Boston and Hong Kong offices reported to me. Within 3 years, I was appointed CEO. I was 33 years old, CEO of a $100 million company with 8,000 people spread across 2 factories with offices in Hong Kong, Boston, China, and reps all over the world. I was feeling pretty good. Even my mom had to admit, okay, maybe you know what you're doing. Maybe. And it's really tempting. It's really tempting to walk off the stage right now and sort of say, hey, I did it, and leave you with the impression that what you're supposed to do is follow your heart, and somehow that'll allow you to win at life. But the fact is, that's not the message, because that's not the way life works. You don't get to arrive at any given point along the continuum of your life and declare victory. Unless you're on your deathbed, no matter who you are, you've got to go to sleep that night, wake up the next morning, and keep walking. I tell you this because in July, I quit my job. I'm no longer CEO of Toy State. And there's a lot of reasons why I did this, but chief among them was the fact that the telltale signals were back. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't breathing. I wasn't very good company around the house. And now I'm getting those phone calls again from my family. Are you sure you know what you're doing? What are you doing? Have you thought this through? You have 2 kids. I do have 2 kids. It certainly seems like to some people in my family that I've stepped off that deep end again. And sometimes I wonder about that. Sometimes they get to me. But then I think about it some more. And you know what? If there's anything, if there's any common thread through all of these milestone stories from my life that I've been telling you today, if there's anything amongst that that's a common thread that I want you to take away with yourselves today, it's that life is a process. If you're going to follow your heart once, you've got to be committed to following it again and again and again and again and again for the rest of your life. You know, for me, any success that I've had that I've considered worthwhile, it's something that I've had to take a leap of faith. Step off that precipice and jump feet first into what everyone else has thought was crazy, but which I knew was right for me. If you find yourselves in that situation, I hope you will have the courage to do the same. Thank you.